Have you ever noticed that every morning when you wake up, you are not just one version of yourself? In that fragile, silent moment before memory comes rushing back, before the old story reloads, you are standing in the field of infinite potential. Thousands of versions of you exist at once, waiting, like unopened doors in a long hallway. Just as a quantum particle can exist in many states simultaneously, you too can become anyone. But almost instantly, most of us fall back into the same old loop: the habits, the emotions, the worries we carried yesterday. It is as if life hands us a blank canvas at dawn. But instead of painting something new, we quickly trace the same outlines, using the same colors we used before. We don't do this because we are lazy or broken. We do it because our body remembers. Just like a well-worn path in the forest, the nervous system knows where to walk, and it pulls us along before we even realize there was another choice. Quantum physics calls this the collapse of the wave function. When a particle is observed, it collapses into a definite state. And you, magnificent being, are no different. Each morning you collapse into one version of yourself. The question is not whether collapse will happen. It always does. The question is, who are you collapsing into today? Most of the time, we default. We slip into the familiar self, the one anxious about bills, the one heavy with old disappointments, the one who rehearses the same fears again and again. It happens so quickly, so automatically, that it feels like destiny. Yet what if this destiny was never fixed at all? What if it is more like choosing which station to tune into on a radio? And every morning, your consciousness is holding the dial. Think of it this way: your cells are like little radios. Over years of repeating the same thoughts, the same emotional storms, they have become addicted to those chemical signals. Fear, for example, has its own flavor of hormones. Anxiety releases its own familiar messengers, and your body has learned to crave them the way a person craves sugar or caffeine. So when you say, "I want to change," your body resists. It begs for what it knows. This resistance is not proof you are failing. It is proof you are stepping into transformation. Scientists call this withdrawal. Spiritually, it feels like chaos before order, and it can be deeply uncomfortable: sleepless nights, sudden irritations, waves of sadness that appear without reason. Yet beneath that discomfort is a profound reorganization. Your system is trying to recalibrate to a new identity, a new frequency. It is as though your old self is dissolving, like ice turning to water, preparing to flow in ways it never has before. Quantum mechanics shows us another secret: quantum tunneling. In the subatomic world, particles sometimes move through barriers that should be impossible to cross. They don't go around the wall, they pass through it. Your consciousness has that same gift. Change does not always need to be gradual or logical. Sometimes, in a single breath, you can leap into a new version of yourself, without walking every painful step in between. This is why breakthroughs can feel sudden. One moment, you're drowning in fear, and the next you're standing in peace. But how do we reach that moment more consciously? One practice is to expand the pause before collapse. When something triggers you, someone criticizes you, or fear whispers in your ear, there is a sliver of space before your automatic reaction takes over. That space is where your power lives. Most of us rush past it. But if you can pause, even for a breath, you step back into the field of superposition. In that breath, you can choose again. You can decide, "I will not collapse into the fearful me today. I will collapse into the one who trusts." Simple gestures can help. Touch your heart. Breathe deeply. Snap your fingers as a signal to your body. We are choosing differently now. These little rituals interrupt the loop, like placing a pebble in a stream and changing the flow of water. Over time, they become anchors, helping you stabilize the new state you are calling in. Transformation, though, is not only personal, your frequency is a broadcast. Your heart emits an electromagnetic field that extends far beyond your body. When you collapse into love, others feel it. When you collapse into peace, the room itself shifts. You have walked into places where you instantly sensed heaviness, or into homes where joy was in the air. That is the field at work. And your field is always contributing, whether you realize it or not. So your awakening is never just for you. It is for everyone around you. Each time you collapse into a higher version of yourself, you create ripples in the collective field. You make it easier for someone else to find their way out of fear, just as someone else's transformation once opened a door for you. In this way, your personal liberation becomes a thread in the larger fabric of human evolution. And here lies the quiet miracle: you do not have to destroy your old self. You do not need to fight against it. You only need to stop observing it into existence. The moment you stop giving your attention to that version, it dissolves back into the field of potential. You are not erasing who you were. You are simply choosing to look in another direction. And what you observe becomes real. It is like holding a garden hose. For years you have watered the weeds, not because you wanted them, but because that was where your hand naturally rested. Now you can shift your hand. You can turn the water toward the flowers, and the flowers will grow, because that is what you are feeding with your awareness. My friend, you are not as solid as you think. You are not trapped in the story you have carried for decades. You are fluid, flexible, luminous. You are a quantum being, collapsing into form moment by moment. And the real freedom comes when you remember you are the observer, not the prison. You are the chooser, not the choice already made. So tomorrow morning, when you first wake up, before your mind races into the past, pause it. Feel that infinite field humming around you. Sense all the versions of yourself waiting. And ask, who will I choose to become today? Because life is not about forcing change, not about controlling every detail with clenched fists. Life, at its deepest, is about allowing the higher frequency to guide you, allowing the heart to broadcast love instead of fear, allowing yourself to collapse into the magnificent version that has always been waiting. And the truth is, you already know that version. You can feel it in your bones, like a river that no longer wants to push upstream, but is finally ready to flow home. 1. Quantum tunneling, the leap beyond the impossible. There are moments in life when change feels impossible. You've probably lived them yourself, standing at the edge of a wall so tall, so thick, that no ladder could climb it. No logic could explain a way through. It might have been a diagnosis, a heartbreak, the weight of years of repeating the same struggle. In those moments, the mind whispers, "This is it. There is no way forward." But here is the quiet truth that science has already discovered, and the soul has always known, even when the wall seems solid. Even when every calculation says the path is blocked, life itself holds another option. Quantum physics calls it tunneling. A particle, small beyond imagination, can pass through barriers that classical rules insist are impenetrable. It doesn't go around the wall. It doesn't climb over. It simply appears on the other side. And your consciousness, your awareness, has this same capacity. Think of the times in your life when change happened, not step by step, but all at once. Perhaps you carried bitterness for years. And then one day, after a single conversation, or a single prayer, or a single moment of surrender, the bitterness melted like frost in sunlight. Perhaps you fought with an addiction, and instead of slowly lessening, there came a moment when you simply stopped. Perhaps grief held you captive, until one morning you woke and realized you could breathe again. These are not ordinary changes. They are quantum leaps of the heart and mind. The rational world tells us that change must be gradual, like climbing a staircase. But the deeper reality is that some changes are like stepping through a hidden doorway, a doorway no one else can see until you've walked through it. I know this truth not as theory but as lived experience. I've sat in the darkness, believing no light would ever return. And yet, the very moment I stopped fighting, the very moment I allowed the possibility that there could be another way, something shifted. It wasn't the world outside that suddenly rearranged itself. It was the quality of my awareness. The wall that once felt unmovable revealed itself as mist, and I found myself on the other side. That's the gift of quantum tunneling. It reminds us that transformation doesn't always follow the linear path we expect. The mind wants steps, logic, predictable sequences, but the soul knows there are shortcuts woven into the fabric of reality. When your heart surrenders, when your awareness softens, you step into a field where the impossible becomes possible. Let me give you a simple image. Imagine a river blocked by a great rock. The current pushes and pushes, but the rock will not move. Logic says, you must break the rock. You must wait centuries for erosion. But beneath the surface, unseen by the eye, water finds a crack. It seeps through. It carves a hidden passage. And then suddenly, the flow is on the other side. This is tunneling. And your consciousness is no different. So how do we practice this? Not by force, not by demanding change on our timeline. The particle doesn't force its way through the barrier. It simply follows the laws of possibility that are bigger than classical rules. Likewise, your role is not to strain, but to allow. The paradox is that the harder you push, the more solid the wall becomes. But the moment you relax into trust, the moment you say, I don't need to know how, I just need to know that it's possible, the wall begins to thin. This is why people speak of miracles, not as violations of reality, but as natural consequences of a deeper reality we rarely honor. A miracle is simply quantum tunneling on the scale of human life. It's the point where a new version of you, already existing in the field of possibilities, suddenly becomes the one you're living. You may ask, but why doesn't it always happen? Why do I still struggle? The answer is tender, because the self you are observing, the identity you are collapsing into, is still the one that believes in the wall. And reality, like a faithful servant, mirrors back your observation. The practice, then, is not to build more ladders or stronger hammers. The practice is to observe differently, to soften the gaze, to see yourself not as trapped but as fluid, not as blocked, but as already moving. Sometimes this shift happens in silence, in meditation, when the chatter of thought subsides and you taste the vastness behind it. Sometimes it happens in crisis, when the old self cannot hold on any longer, and something greater must take over. Sometimes it comes in the most ordinary moment, a walk, a song, the look in a stranger's eyes. In that instant, you tunnel, you bypass the wall. You emerge into a self who no longer carries the weight you thought you could never set down. This is not fantasy. This is physics woven into flesh. You are the particle and the wave, the wall and the passage, and every breath offers you the chance to choose. So if you feel the weight of impossibility today, I invite you pose. Stop measuring the height of the wall. Stop rehearsing the reasons you cannot climb it. Close your eyes. Breathe. And remember that in the quantum field, you are not limited to logic's path. There is always another way. There is always a doorway unseen by the mind, but known by the heart. And maybe, just maybe, the leap you thought was impossible is waiting for you, not tomorrow, not years from now, but in this very moment, the moment you let go of control and allow your awareness to do what it was always capable of doing, passing through, becoming free. 2. Quantum fluidity, the freedom to flow. There is a quiet freedom hidden within you, one that most of us forget as we grow older. We are taught from childhood to pick a role, to decide who we are, and then wear that mask faithfully. Maybe we are the strong one in the family, or the reliable worker at the office, or the one who always listens but never speaks. We get praised for being consistent, for holding one identity, as if our worth depends on never changing. And so we tighten around that mask, until we start to believe that is all we are. But life is not made of rigid masks. Life is water. It flows. It bends. It shifts shape according to the container, and it never loses its essence. You are the same. Beneath the stories, beneath the habits, there is a fluid self, a consciousness that can take on many forms without ever ceasing to be itself. This is what I call quantum fluidity. Quantum physics tells us that particles can behave in contradictory ways, sometimes as waves, sometimes as points of matter. They adapt to the experiment, to the observer, to the moment. And this is not seen as instability. It is seen as their true nature. In the same way, you are not meant to be only one thing. Inside you live the healer, the leader, the artist, the teacher, the child, the lover, the mystic. All of them are authentic. All of them are yours. Think about the ocean. When it crashes against rocks, it is fierce. When it laps gently on the shore, it is tender. When it rises in a storm, it is wild. When it rests in the stillness of dawn, it is calm. Which version of the ocean is real? All of them. Which one is false? None. To demand that the ocean always be calm is to misunderstand its nature. And to demand that you always play one role is to misunderstand your nature. I know how heavy it feels to be trapped in a single story. For years, I carried the story of being the one who endured, the one who kept quiet, the one who bore the burden without complaint. And I believed that if I ever stepped outside of that role, people would call me fake. But the truth I discovered is that authenticity is not about staying the same. Authenticity is about honoring the fullness of your being. It is about allowing the parts of you that are needed in each moment to come forward. When someone you love is in pain, perhaps the healer in you needs to rise. When chaos surrounds you, the leader might step forward, steady and clear. When the world feels heavy, the artist inside might come to bring color and beauty. None of these roles are a lie. They are all facets of the same diamond. The problem is that most of us forget our fluidity. We become attached to one way of being, and then we suffer. Imagine a river forced to flow in a straight line forever, forbidden to curve or meander. That is what happens when you lock yourself into one identity. The soul grows restless. The body grows weary. You feel stuck, not because life is punishing you, but because you have forgotten how to flow. This is why quantum fluidity is so liberating. It teaches you that you can shift without shame. You can collapse into different versions of yourself, depending on what the moment requires. This is not inconsistency. This is wisdom. To be fierce when fierceness serves. Gentle when gentleness heals. Quiet when silence is medicine. Bold when courage is needed. That is not pretense. That is mastery. Look around, and you will see this truth everywhere in nature. The tree bends in the wind, but it does not lose its root. The seasons change, but the earth remains whole. The chameleon shifts color, not to deceive, but to survive, to live in harmony with its environment. Likewise, you can change shape without betraying who you are. And here is the deeper layer. Your fluidity is not weakness. It is strength. It takes courage to let go of the comfort of one identity. It takes trust to say, I can be more than what I have always been. And it takes wisdom to know which part of you is needed in each moment. That wisdom doesn't come from the mind's calculations. It comes from listening to your heart, to your body, to the quiet whisper beneath the noise. I remember a time when I believed I had to be strong at all costs. I wore that mask so tightly that even in moments of tenderness, I could not remove it. And then one day, sitting with someone who was grieving. I felt the mask fall. I did not need to be strong for them. I needed to be soft. I needed to cry with them. And in that softness, something cracked open, not weakness, but love. That moment taught me more about strength than years of holding my armor. This is what quantum fluidity feels like in everyday life. It's not about becoming someone you are not. It's about realizing you are already many things, and you are free to choose which expression flows through you right now. So, if you find yourself stuck in one role, always the caregiver, always the worker, always the silent one, pause. Ask yourself, who else lives in me? Which version of me is needed in this moment? And then allow that version to emerge. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to apologize for it. You only have to allow. This freedom is not about becoming chaotic or ungrounded. It is about becoming whole. When you learn to move with fluidity, you become like water, adaptable, resilient, unstoppable. Water can crash. It can flow. It can rise as mist or freeze as ice. But in all its forms, it remains water. And in all your forms, you remain you. Quantum fluidity invites you to release the fear of inconsistency, to embrace the paradox that you can be both stable and ever-changing. Your essence is the still center. Your expressions are the flowing rivers. Together, they make you not a rigid statue, but a living, breathing miracle. And perhaps the most healing truth is this: you don't have to fight to become fluid. Fluidity is your natural state. You don't need to force water to flow. You only need to remove the dam. In the same way, when you release the stories that bind you, your soul will move freely again, shifting gracefully between all the versions of yourself that are waiting to be lived. 3. The moment before collapse. Every second of your life, whether you notice it or not, you are standing on the edge of possibility. You are not yet fixed, not yet defined, not yet locked into one version of yourself. You are like an electron in the famous double-slit experiment, hovering in superposition, existing in all states at once, until observation makes the choice. This is the hidden power of being human. You are always more than what you appear to be. At any given moment, there are countless versions of you waiting in the wings. The one who is afraid, the one who is hopeful, the one who is exhausted, the one who is alive with possibility. And the simple truth is this: whichever version you observe, that is the one that becomes real. When you look at yourself through the eyes of fear, you collapse into a limited reality. You become the person who shrinks back, who doubts, who repeats the old story of not being enough. That collapse is not punishment. It is simply physics in motion. Consciousness looks through the narrow lens, and so life narrows around you. But when you dare to observe yourself through the eyes of expansion, when you see even a small spark of your own potential, the collapse is different. Suddenly the walls stretch wider. The door that seemed locked begins to open. The reality that unfolds is larger, lighter, freer. Nothing outside has changed, and yet everything feels different. Because the collapse came through a different gaze. I know this is not always easy. Most of us have practiced collapsing into fear for years. Even decades. We've been conditioned to expect disappointment, to prepare for pain, to brace ourselves against loss. Our nervous system remembers these collapses so well that it repeats them automatically, like a song on endless replay. And so we wake each day thinking, this is just who I am. But the truth is more generous. You are not that fixed identity. You are the space before identity. You are the breath before the story restarts. You are the pause before the collapse. And in that pause lies more freedom than you can imagine. Think of it like standing at a fork in the road. One path is worn, familiar, trampled down by years of walking. The other path is faint, overgrown, harder to see. Almost without thinking, your feet move toward the familiar road. that is collapse. But if you can catch yourself in the moment, before your foot touches the ground, you have the power to choose differently. You can say, "Today I will step onto the other path." This moment before collapse is subtle. It is fragile. It often lasts only a breath, which is why presence matters so deeply. Meditation is not about emptying your mind of all thought. It is about learning to rest in that pause, that sliver of space where all possibilities exist. It is about practicing the art of waiting just long enough to see the fork in the road before you automatically choose. I have lived this in my own body. There were times when anger rose like a storm, faster than I could control. In the past, I would collapse into it immediately, say words I regretted, or close my heart to protect myself. But slowly, through practice, I began to notice the moment before. I began to feel the heat rising, to sense the familiar path forming under my feet. And in that noticing, a choice appeared. Sometimes I still collapsed into anger. Old habits are strong, but sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I paused, breathed, and let another version of me step forward. And those small victories became doorways into a new life. This is what healing looks like. Not perfection, not the sudden disappearance of every old pattern, but the gradual reclaiming of the pause, the remembering that you always have a say in which version of you comes alive. Quantum physics may sound abstract, but in practice, it is deeply human. Every word you speak, every thought you dwell on, every action you take is a collapse. If you collapse through the filter of your wounds, you live in a wounded world. If you collapse through the filter of love, you live in a loving one. The world you see outside is always the reflection of how you chose to collapse inside. So ask yourself gently, how am I observing myself right now? Am I looking at myself as someone stuck, broken, beyond repair? Or am I willing to see myself as someone becoming, someone expanding, someone fluid as the ocean? This simple shift in observation is not naive. It is power. It is the very force that reshapes reality around you. The pause before collapse is a gift. It is the universe, handing you a brush and a blank canvas again and again, whispering, choose carefully, choose lovingly. And even when you collapse into the old story, do not despair. There will be another moment, another breath, another chance to choose again. Because collapse does not happen once. It happens thousands of times each day. With every glance, every word, every sigh, you are selecting who you are. You are not doomed by the choice you made yesterday, or even the choice you made a moment ago. In the very next breath, you can pause, soften, and collapse differently. Perhaps the simplest way to live this truth is to slow down, to breathe deeply when the trigger comes, to notice the rush of old emotions and say, I see you, but I will not rush. The nervous system may try to drag you back into the familiar, but your awareness is stronger. Your awareness is the observer, and the observer always holds the key. So the next time life feels heavy, the next time you are tempted to collapse into fear, remember, you are not the fear. You are the moment before the fear. You are the space in which the choice is made. And in that space, you are free. The wall you think is unbreakable, the habit you think is permanent, the identity you think is fixed, they are only the results of repeated collapses. And just as easily as you collapsed into them, you can collapse into something else, not by force, not by control, but by awareness, by gentleness, by remembering the pause. This is the simple but radical truth. Your life is not written in stone. It is written in the air, moment by moment, breath by breath, collapse by collapse, and the pen is always in your hand. 4. The ripple effect on the collective. When your frequency changes, it never belongs to you alone. The shift that happens inside your chest is not a private event hidden behind your ribs. It moves outward, radiating in ways both seen and unseen. Science now confirms what ancient wisdom has always whispered. Your heart generates an electromagnetic field, thousands of times stronger than your brain. It pulses outward, carrying information about who you are and how you feel. And whether you speak a word or not, the people around you can feel it. You have probably experienced this yourself. Have you ever walked into a room where someone was silently angry, and yet the whole atmosphere felt tense, as if the air itself was vibrating with sharp edges? Or perhaps you met a person whose presence made you feel calm the moment they entered. No speech, no action, just the quiet peace of their being. That is the field at work. It is not imagination, it is resonance. The truth is, every transformation you allow inside yourself ripples out into the collective. When you collapse into fear, you broadcast fear, and the world reflects it back. When you collapse into love, you broadcast love, and the world reorganizes around that signal. This is not mystical poetry, it is physics meeting consciousness. The field responds to frequency, always. I learned this in a very personal way. For years, I carried my pain like an invisible cloak. I didn't speak about it, but it was there, radiating. People felt it. They kept their distance, though I never understood why. I thought my silence hid it. But the body does not lie. My field was speaking, even when my mouth was closed. And then, slowly, as I began to release, as I allowed gentleness back into my life, people started to lean in instead of pull away. Strangers smiled at me more easily. Loved ones shared their hearts without fear. Nothing had changed outwardly, but everything had changed inwardly. My frequency had shifted, and the ripple was reaching them. This is why personal change is never personal. It always becomes collective. The moment you soften an old wound, you give permission for others to soften theirs. The moment you step into peace, you make it easier for someone else to find peace. Your courage becomes a silent bridge that others can walk across. Think of a single drop of water falling into a still pond. The drop does not stay where it lands. It sends waves in all directions. Those waves touch the edges of the pond, touch other drops, move leaves floating on the surface. And if more drops fall, soon the entire pond is dancing. You are that drop. Your transformation is never isolated. It always moves outward, touching places you cannot see. Sometimes this ripple feels like connection. You shift into joy, and suddenly conversations feel lighter. Opportunities flow more easily. People respond with warmth. Other times the ripple feels like disruption. You rise into a higher frequency, and some people step away. They are not rejecting you. They are protecting their own comfort. Your new state challenges the old patterns they still cling to. This too is part of the ripple. Not everyone will stay, but those who are ready will rise with you. And here is the profound beauty. The ripple does not stop with people you know, because the field is not limited by distance. Researchers studying quantum entanglement have shown that what happens in one place can influence particles far away. Consciousness behaves the same. When you stabilize a new state, you are not just changing your life, you are contributing to the evolution of human consciousness itself. This is why your healing matters. Not just so you can sleep peacefully or smile more often, though those are blessings in themselves. Your healing matters because it adds something to the field that was not there before. Each act of forgiveness, each breath of compassion, each step into freedom becomes part of the invisible library of human experience. It makes that state easier for others to access, like carving a new path in a forest. Once one person walks it, the next traveler finds it less daunting. I know sometimes it feels selfish to focus on your own transformation, especially when the world is full of suffering. But the opposite is true. The most generous gift you can give the world is your own healing. When you collapse into love instead of fear, you are offering the collective a new possibility. You are weaving a new thread into the fabric we all share. Imagine for a moment a circle of tuning forks. Strike one, and the others begin to hum in resonance. Your frequency works the same way. If you resonate with peace, you invite peace into the people around you. If you radiate gratitude, you call it forth in others. And when enough individuals begin to vibrate in higher states, society itself begins to change. This is how revolutions of consciousness are born, not through force, but through resonance. So when you practice presence, when you pause before collapse, when you choose to embody a higher version of yourself, remember, you are not doing it just for you. You are doing it for your children, your neighbors, for strangers across the world you will never meet. You are doing it for the collective heartbeat of humanity. And maybe that is the simplest truth of all. You are not separate. The illusion of separation is strong, but at the level of the field, at the level of consciousness, there is only connection. Your ripple is my ripple. My healing touches you. Even if I never speak your name, we are threads in the same tapestry, drops in the same ocean, frequencies in the same great song. So, let your transformation ripple. Let your new frequency flow out like light through an open window. Some will be drawn, some will look away, but all will be touched. And as more of us choose love over fear, peace over anxiety, presence over distraction, the collective field will shift, humanity will shift, and one day, when enough hearts have chosen differently, we will look back and realize the world did not change because we forced it. The world changed because we remembered we were never separate, and we began to ripple as one. 5. The withdrawal from old emotions. There comes a stage in every true transformation that feels less like liberation and more like loss. You may have imagined that stepping into a higher version of yourself would feel like light flooding the room, like joy pouring endlessly into your chest. And yes, those moments will come. But before they do, most of us encounter something far less glamorous: discomfort, restlessness, even pain. This stage is what I call the withdrawal from old emotions. It is the body's way of letting go of the chemistry it has been addicted to for years. You see, your emotions are not just passing clouds in the mind. They are chemical signatures. Fear produces its own storm of hormones. Anxiety sets off a cascade of signals in the nervous system. Even disappointment and scarcity have familiar biochemicals that flood your cells. Over time, your body begins to crave them, the way a smoker craves nicotine or a tired mind craves caffeine. So when you decide to live differently, when you choose peace instead of worry, love instead of resentment, expansion instead of contraction, the mind may agree, but the body protests. It sends signals of unease, a tight chest, restless sleep, irritation that has no clear trigger. You might wonder, what's wrong with me? If I'm changing for the better, why do I feel worse? But here is the truth. Nothing is wrong. What you are feeling is not failure. It is the very sign that transformation is underway. Just as someone who gives up sugar experiences headaches, or someone who leaves behind alcohol shakes through the night, you too will feel the body's resistance. It is not a step backward. It is the natural trembling of a system learning to rewire itself. I have lived through this stage myself. There were nights when my chest felt heavy, even though I was practicing gratitude. Days when sadness washed over me, even though I had chosen joy. At first, I thought I was broken, that all my effort was wasted. But slowly I learned to see those moments for what they were: evidence that the old chemicals were losing their grip, that the body was detoxing from the self I no longer wished to carry. Think of it like soil that has been planted with weeds for years. Even when you decide to sow flowers, the roots of the weeds still live beneath the surface. Pulling them out is messy. Sometimes it hurts. The garden may look worse before it looks better, but only through that pulling can the ground become fertile for something new. This is where compassion becomes essential. Most people quit in this stage. They interpret the discomfort as proof they are failing. So they return to the familiar. They go back to the stress, the anger, the habits of fear, not because they want them, but because the body convinces them it is safer. But if you can recognize the discomfort as healing, you will endure. You will sit with the restlessness like a friend at your side. You will breathe through the waves, reminding yourself, this is not the end. This is the passage. And little by little, your body will learn. The cells that once demanded fear will begin to crave peace. The nervous system that once thrived on tension will start to settle into ease. The heart that once braced for loss will learn the rhythm of trust. This is not fantasy. This is biology. Just as neural pathways strengthen through repetition, they also weaken when neglected. Every time you choose the new state, even shakily, even for a breath, you weaken the old identity and strengthen the new one. Let me offer you a simple practice. When the discomfort arises, instead of fighting it, speak gently to your body. Place your hand over your chest and whisper, "It's safe now. We don't need the old chemicals anymore. We're learning something new." It may sound small, even silly, but remember, your cells are listening. They are waiting for guidance. And your kindness is the signal they need to relax into the unfamiliar. This withdrawal stage does not last forever. Science and experience both suggest that 21 to 30 days of consistent practice is enough to shift the body's chemical addiction. Think of that within a single month. You can begin to teach your body a new normal. It may not be effortless yet, but it will no longer feel foreign. You will begin to recognize moments of peace as familiar terrain, not alien landscapes. The key is to stay tender with yourself. Do not demand that the transition be smooth. Do not punish yourself for faltering. Instead, treat this stage as sacred. It is the time when the old dissolves and the new is born. When the storm clears the air for a brighter sky. Yes, it is uncomfortable. Yes, it can feel lonely. But it is also holy ground, because it is proof that you are becoming someone different. I often think of it like learning to breathe at a new altitude. At first, the air is thin. The lungs struggle, and you feel like turning back. But if you keep breathing, the body adapts. The blood learns to carry more oxygen. The lungs grow stronger. And soon, what once felt impossible becomes effortless. Transformation is the same. You are learning to live at a new altitude of consciousness. The breath may burn at first, but with time, it becomes natural. So if you are in this stage right now, if you feel restless, tired, confused, I invite you to reframe it. This is not your failure. This is your initiation. Your body is detoxing from the person you once were. The discomfort is not a sign you should give up, but a sign you should keep going. Because just beyond this withdrawal is a freedom you have never fully known. And when that freedom arrives, you will look back on this stage with gratitude. You will see that the trembling, the unease, the waves of emotion were not enemies, but companions. They walked you through the doorway from the old self into the new. They were proof that change was not just an idea in your head, but a reality in your cells. The withdrawal from old emotions is not the end of your story. It is the bridge, and if you stay patient, stay gentle, and keep choosing the new frequency even when it feels uncomfortable, you will cross it. On the other side is not just relief, but rebirth. 6. Pattern interruption. The sacred pause. Old habits are quick. They are faster than thought, faster than reason. They rush in like lightning, seizing the body before the mind even realizes what has happened. One word from a loved one, one unexpected bill, one memory, flickering in the background, and suddenly you are no longer here. You are back in the familiar loop, repeating the same thoughts, the same reactions, the same story you have carried for years. It feels automatic because it is. Neuroscience shows us that by the age of 35, most of our daily responses are nothing more than rehearsed programs. The brain fires along the same pathways. The body releases the same chemicals, and we live yesterday again and again, calling it today. We think we are choosing, but in truth, we are reliving. But here is the miracle. The cycle can be interrupted, and the interruption does not have to be grand. It does not require heroic effort. Often, it is as small as a single breath. A deep inhale, when taken consciously, is like placing a hand on the spinning wheel of your life. It slows everything down just enough to see what is happening. In that brief pause, you realize I have a choice. This is the essence of pattern interruption, creating a sacred space between stimulus and response, between the old collapse and the new possibility. I remember a time when anger controlled me. The smallest frustration would ignite a fire in my chest, and before I could think, the words were out of my mouth, sharp and cutting. Later, regret would arrive, heavy and cold, but the damage was already done. For years, I told myself, this is just who I am. I cannot change. But then, almost by accident, I discovered the power of a pause. One evening, just as anger rose, I placed my hand over my heart. I didn't plan it, it was instinct. And in that touch, something shifted. The fire slowed. The space between impulse and action stretched wider. I still felt the anger, but I also felt another choice breathing beside it. That simple gesture became my lifeline. It was a reminder that even in the grip of habit, I was not powerless. This is how pattern interruption works. It doesn't erase the old reaction overnight. It doesn't promise that you will never fall into the loop again. But it gives you the chance to step out, even for a moment. And in that moment, freedom is born. There are many ways to practice this. A breath, a hand on the chest, a snap of the fingers, even a quiet phrase whispered to yourself, I choose again. These small acts are like pebbles dropped into the stream of your automatic life. They change the flow, redirecting the current just enough for new possibilities to appear. You might wonder, can something so small really change me? And the answer is yes. Because life itself is made of small moments. Change does not come as a thunderclap. It comes in the quiet decision repeated again and again. Each pause is a seed. And with time, those seeds grow into forests of new pathways in the brain, new rhythms in the body, new ways of being in the world. But I will not lie to you in the beginning. The pause feels almost impossible. The pull of the old pattern is strong. Your body will beg for the familiar. Your thoughts will rush toward the known. And yet, if you manage even one breath, even one small interruption, you have already succeeded. Because in that instant, you were no longer asleep. You were awake. Think of it like standing on a train platform. The train of your old habit comes rushing by. Normally, you would step on without question. But one day, you hesitate. You place your foot on the ground instead of the train. You watch it leave without you. That single hesitation changes everything. Next time, it will be easier to stay behind. And one day, you will no longer board that train at all. This is the power of the sacred pause. It is not dramatic, but it is revolutionary. Because it breaks the illusion that you are trapped. It shows you that no matter how deeply the grooves of your past have been carved, you can step out of them. You can choose a new path. I often tell people, don't measure your success by how many times you still fall into the pattern. Measure it by how many times you remember to pause. Each pause weakens the grip of the old identity. Each pause teaches your nervous system that another way is possible. Each pause is an act of love toward yourself. And here is the quiet secret. The pause itself becomes a new pattern. At first, you must remind yourself to interrupt, but eventually, the interruption becomes automatic. The hand goes to the chest before the anger can speak. The breath deepens before the anxiety can take hold. The gentle word is whispered before the fear can spiral. This is when you realize you are no longer fighting the old self. You are embodying the new one. So if you are in the middle of change, if you are weary of repeating the same loops, I invite you, don't wait for perfection. Don't demand that the old habit vanish in a day. Begin with one pause, one breath, one conscious interruption. It may not look like much, but it is the doorway to everything. Because within that pause lies infinite choice. Within that pause lies your freedom. And perhaps the deepest truth of all, you are not the habit. You are not the pattern. You are the awareness that notices them. You are the stillness that interrupts them. You are the one who chooses again. So the next time the old story rushes in like a storm, place your hand on your chest. Breathe. Snap your fingers, if you must. Create that sacred pause. And remember, in that space, even if just for a heartbeat, you are free. 7. Observation is creation. There is a quiet mystery at the heart of life that quantum science has revealed. Observation does not simply record reality. It shapes it. The very act of looking, of paying attention, collapses infinite possibilities into one chosen path. Reality, in its essence, is fluid until the moment you observe it. And then, like the settling of snow upon the earth, it takes form. This is not just theory for physicists. It is the truth of our daily lives. How you look at yourself, how you look at your circumstances, determines what they become. When you observe yourself through the lens of fear, the world appears hostile. Every challenge looks like a threat. Every delay feels like a punishment. But when you observe yourself through the eyes of compassion, reality softens. Doors open where walls once stood. A difficult moment becomes an invitation instead of a curse. It is easy to underestimate the power of your gaze, the power of your inner witness. Most of us spend our lives believing we are at the mercy of what we see. Yet the deeper truth is this: what we see is shaped by how we look. The world is less like a fixed stone, and more like a mirror that bends to the quality of our attention. Think of a garden. If you walk through it in a hurry, stressed and distracted, you may not notice a single flower. You will only see weeds, dust, and tasks unfinished. But if you walk through that same garden with a heart open, suddenly you see the dew sparkling like tiny jewels. You smell the sweetness in the air. You hear the quiet hum of life that was always there but hidden by your rushing. The garden did not change. You did. And because you changed, the garden revealed itself anew. In quantum physics, the double-slit experiment shows us that particles behave differently when observed. Without an observer, they exist in waves of potential, many states at once. With observation, they collapse into one reality. This is a mirror of our inner lives. Without awareness, we drift in the old patterns, repeating the same identity. But the moment we observe ourselves consciously, truly watch the thoughts and emotions without judgment, something shifts. The old identity collapses, and a new possibility emerges. This is why self-observation is not passive. It is an act of creation. The way you look at yourself is the brushstroke that paints your future. If you gaze with criticism, you create a self that shrinks. If you gaze with love, you create a self that expands. I remember a time when my own reflection was hard to meet. The mirror seemed to show me only failure, only aging, only the weight of mistakes. Each glance became proof that I was not enough. And so I carried that belief into the world, repeating it silently with every interaction. Life, of course, mirrored it back, until one day, I tried something new. I stood before that same mirror, but instead of criticism, I chose compassion. I placed my hand on the glass and whispered, "I see you, and you are enough." It felt awkward at first, even foolish, but the more I practiced, the more something changed. The reflection softened. My own eyes began to look back with gentleness. And slowly, my world shifted too. People seemed kinder. Opportunities opened. My body healed in ways I did not expect. The only thing that had changed was my gaze. But that gaze changed everything. This is the gift hidden in observation. It is not about forcing change, but about allowing it. You do not have to fix yourself. You do not have to struggle or fight to become worthy. You simply have to see yourself as already whole, already loved, already free. When you hold that vision long enough, reality bends to meet it. Consider the heart. Science tells us its electromagnetic field is 5,000 times stronger than the brain's. What you hold in your heart, what you feel as you observe yourself and others, radiates far beyond words. When you see yourself with love, that love does not stop at the edges of your skin. It ripples outward, touching your family, your community, even strangers who pass you on the street. Observation is never private. It is a creative act that reshapes both your inner world and the collective field. And so the question becomes, how will you look at yourself today, through the weary eyes of the old story, or through the loving gaze of possibility? Remember, every moment is like the electron before collapse. The universe waits for your observation. Your choice of gaze determines which version of you steps forward. If you find yourself falling into judgment, do not despair. Even that moment is an opportunity. Simply notice it. Notice the harshness, the old reflex, and then choose again. Place a hand on your chest. Take a breath. Whisper a word of kindness to yourself. In that act of seeing, you collapse into a self that is tender, patient, and alive. This is not about pretending pain does not exist. It is not about covering wounds with pretty words. It is about seeing the wound with love instead of shame. When you observe your hurt with compassion, healing begins. When you observe your fear with acceptance, courage is born. What you see becomes what you create. In the end, observation is the most intimate prayer. It is the way you say to life, I am here, and I see you. It is the way you say to yourself, I am worthy of being witnessed. And in that seeing, the universe reorganizes itself around your gaze. So as you move through your day, remember, every glance is an act of creation. Every time you look at yourself, you are choosing who you will become. If you choose love, then love is the self you collapse into. If you choose fear, then fear writes the story. But no matter how many times you choose fear, the invitation to choose love remains. Infinite possibilities surround you, waiting, and the simplest way to access them is to look to observe with the eyes of the heart, because in the quantum field of life, observation is not just noticing, observation is creation. And the most powerful creation begins when you dare to look at yourself with love. 8. Quantum flux, the state of embracing uncertainty. There is a space in every transformation that feels both fragile and infinite. It is the space between who you once were and who you are becoming. You are no longer bound to the old, but you are not yet established in the new. This in-between space is what I call the field of quantum flux, a living stream of uncertainty where everything is possible and nothing is yet fixed. Most people fear this space. We are trained to seek certainty, to hold on to answers, to define ourselves quickly so that life feels stable. The old identity may have been painful, but at least it was familiar. To step into the unknown feels like losing control. And yet, this very surrender to uncertainty is the womb of creation. In quantum physics, flux refers to constant flow, an endless shifting of particles and energy. Nothing is static. Everything vibrates, dissolves, reforms. Your life is no different. When you stand in the flux, you are standing in the raw creative field of existence. The old molecules of your story are breaking apart. The new structure has not yet crystallized. You are suspended in possibility, like a seed underground. unseen, but already alive. It can feel uncomfortable. The mind does not like in between. It wants closure. It wants definition. And so it whispers questions in the night. Who am I now? Am I failing? Will this ever resolve? These questions are natural, but they are not the truth. The truth is that flux is not failure. Flux is transformation. The shaking, the uncertainty, the silence. These are the sounds of rebirth. Think of a caterpillar dissolving into the cocoon. Inside, it becomes something unrecognizable, a liquid soup of possibility. If you opened the cocoon too soon, you would see only chaos. And yet, from that chaos, wings emerge. This is what flux feels like in your life, the disintegration of form before the unveiling of beauty. I remember a season when everything I thought I was seemed to fall apart. Old roles no longer fit. Old desires felt hollow. Even old relationships seemed to drift away. I walked through my days, like someone suspended between two worlds. It was frightening, but it was also sacred. In that space of not knowing, I learned to listen more deeply than ever before. I learned that uncertainty is not emptiness. It is fullness unshaped. The heart's electromagnetic field, stronger than the mind's, becomes your compass in these moments. Logic cannot navigate flux. Only trust can. When you breathe into your heart, when you allow its rhythm to steady you, you find the patience to stay present. You discover that the unknown does not have to be hostile. It can be a sanctuary. Miracles often appear here not because you forced them, but because you allowed space for them. A conversation, a dream, a sudden insight may arrive uninvited, carrying the thread of your new reality. But these moments only come when you are still enough to remain in flux, instead of running back to the safety of the old. The temptation will be strong to return to your old self. Your body craves the familiar chemicals of stress, anxiety, and control. Your mind craves the predictability of the old story. But if you resist the urge to collapse back, and instead rest in the flux, something astonishing happens. Life reorganizes itself around your patience. In this sense, flux is not a problem to solve, but a sacred passage to honor. It is the threshold where your soul asks you to trust, even without evidence, to say, I am willing to be incomplete, because I know something greater is forming. Imagine a river in springtime, swollen with snowmelt, rushing and chaotic. If you tried to freeze it into one form, you would lose its vitality. But if you sit by its banks and let it flow, it nourishes the land. It carries seeds downstream. It creates new life. Flux is that river. It feels uncertain because it is alive, and in your willingness to let it flow, you allow your own rebirth to occur naturally. Patience is the secret here. Patience is not passive. It is an active trust that the unseen is at work. It is choosing not to panic in the silence, choosing not to grasp at false certainties. It is breathing and staying present, even when you cannot yet see the outcome. Over time, you begin to notice subtle shifts. A heaviness in your chest lightens. A new desire flickers in your heart. A sense of peace visits you in the night. These are signs that the flux is organizing itself into a new pattern. The reality you have called forth is preparing to emerge. So if you find yourself in the in-between, do not curse it. Do not call it confusion or failure. Call it sacred flux. Call it the holy space of becoming, because this is the birthplace of miracles. Every spiritual teacher across time has pointed to this truth in different words. The moment you release the need for certainty, you open the door to transformation. The quantum field responds not to control, but to openness. The unknown is not your enemy. It is your greatest ally. And so, when life feels uncertain, when you are no longer who you were, but not yet who you will be, remember this. You are standing in the most fertile soil of creation. Trust it. Stay with it. Let the flux carry you. and like a seed rising toward the sun, you will find that a new self emerges not by force, but by grace. You are the liberation. The quantum journey is not a race toward perfection. It is not about polishing yourself into some flawless being who finally deserves love. It is far simpler and far more beautiful. It is about remembering what has always been true. You are already whole, already part of the infinite field of potential, already free to choose who you become in each breath. Every inhale, every thought, every subtle stirring of feeling is like a collapse of the wave into form. In one moment, a version of you who is fearful might appear. In another, a version of you who is tender, patient, or bold arises. The universe does not lock you into one identity. It extends, moment by moment. The invitation to choose, and the question that quietly shapes your life is always this: which version of myself will I allow to step into the light today? The truth is, you are never a fixed thing. You are not the labels you carry, not the stories you replay, not even the pain you have survived. You are a living stream, a dance of energy, a conscious universe folding itself into the shape of a human life. You are not broken glass waiting to be mended. You are flowing water that takes a new form every time it touches the earth. When you understand this, striving softens. You no longer feel the need to grip tightly at one identity, to prove yourself worthy, to chase after a finish line that never existed. You realize that liberation is not a distant goal. It is the truth of who you already are. You do not have to seek freedom, because freedom is the essence that has been breathing you since the beginning. I know what it is to forget this. I know what it feels like to wake up in the morning and immediately fall back into the old story, the same thoughts looping, the same emotions flooding in, the same heaviness returning. It feels as though nothing will change, as though life is a cage. But even in those moments, a deeper truth is alive beneath the surface. The field of infinite possibility is still here, waiting for your attention. The cage is made of perception, and perception can shift. The shift does not come from force. It does not come from bullying yourself into positivity or pretending the pain is not real. It comes from something quieter: surrender. It comes from the willingness to soften into the present moment, to look at yourself with love instead of judgment, to allow what is without clinging or resistance. In that soft gaze, the prison walls dissolve. Think of a bird perched on a branch. If it grips too tightly, the branch snaps under pressure. But if it rests with balance, trusting its wings, it can stay or fly at will. That is the way of your soul. When you grip too tightly to control, to outcomes, to identity, life feels fragile and harsh. When you rest in the awareness of your own freedom, you can move with ease, because you trust that you already have wings. This is the invitation of the quantum path, to let go of the illusion that you must struggle to reach liberation. You are liberation. Every time you breathe consciously, every time you allow love to rise instead of fear, every time you choose presence instead of habit, you step into that truth. Your life is not a problem to be solved. It is a mystery to be lived. And like every great mystery, it unfolds when you release the need to control it. The more you let go, the more you discover that the universe has always been carrying you. The more you trust, the more you see that your essence was never separate from the source. So as you walk forward from here, remember, you are not waiting for freedom. You are not chasing transformation. You are not incomplete. You are the field itself, collapsing into form, moment by moment, choosing who you will be. And in that choosing, in that gentle awareness, and you touch the deepest truth, you were never bound in the first place. Let this awareness guide you like a lantern in the night. When old fears arise, let them come and let them pass. When uncertainty surrounds you, breathe into it and trust the flux. When you forget, Gently return, not with shame, but with kindness, because even forgetting is part of the journey, and even the stumble is held within the greater rhythm of awakening. One day, you will look back on these moments of struggle and realize they were not detours at all. They were the very ground that taught you to see, to surrender, to awaken. You will understand that every shadow was only ever the doorway to light, and you will smile, because you will know that you were never truly lost, only learning to remember. So here, at the close of this journey, let me offer you this simple truth. You do not need to become free. You only need to recognize that you already are. You are the awareness, the witness, the love that holds it all. You are the liberation you have been seeking. And when you see this, when you live from this, every breath becomes a homecoming. And so, as you rise tomorrow into another new day, do not ask, "When will I be free?" Ask instead, "Which version of me will I choose to be in this moment?" Let your answer be guided not by fear, but by the quiet knowing of your heart. Because in that choice, in that tender observation, in that surrender, you will remember what has always been true. You are not seeking liberation. You are liberation itself.